and welcome back to my channel. In this card video, I'm going to be creating a shaped shaker card featuring this summer cat or favorite catch dies from the Concord 9th summer camp. I'll be creating the shape out of this little jar, and then I'll be filling it with some little lightning bugs and some shaker bits. So to create the shaped card, I'm going to start with a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card panel that is going to be sort of scored on the long side. And even though the jar is a little bit smaller, this just makes it simpler to start with this size. I'm then going to line up the shaped die along the folded edge of the card base so that just a tiny bit of it is hanging over the card, so it won't cut the full shape, just most of it, and then a small portion will not be cut, which is where that fold line is. I'm going to be using my shim when I run it through my die cutting machine so that it will easily cut through both layers of cardstock in one pass. So once I've run that through my die cutting machine, I'm going to go ahead and remove the die, and you'll see that I have a folded little card base where just a little bit of portion is not cut, but otherwise it's that full jar shape. I'm next going to create a card panel that will be the full shape of the card, and this will form the sort of back of my shaker window, and this will be done out of rainforest cardstock. So when you put them together, there's a little bit of overhang where you see the rainforest cardstock, but for the most part, they're at the exact same sort of shape. So I'm going to set my card base away for now and focus on making the back of my shaker. So I'm going to ink blend some of these wavy lines, trying to sort of create that summer hazy look on the back of this card. And I'm going to be doing it tone on tone, so it's rainforest cardstock and rainforest ink, just a really light hand of ink blending over this. Again, just trying to get that sort of nice kind of haze of summer. You know what I'm talking about, right? Sort of in the distance, that little bit of haze. And then I'm going to come in after removing my stencil to add some ink blending around the edges just to darken those edges, because that is where the top part of the shaker will go, and sort of create some of those darker edges that you might see. There's also a coordinating stamp set, and it has these sort of little dots. So again, using rainforest ink, I'm going to add these little stamp dots by putting the stamp on a stamp block and just adding those in the background as well. Again, really trying to create that sort of summer night sky. And so that is sort of the finished back panel of the shaker window. I'm next going to cut out the remaining pieces that I'll be using. So I have sort of the front of the shaker window. I have the lightning bugs themselves, the wings, the little butts, and then the tops of the jars. And then these two little circles that are going to form the glow, behind the lightning bug butt. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those, die cut those off screen, and I'll be right back. So I've got most of these pieces cut out, and now I'm going to cut out this little dainty hello die to go on the front of the window when I get to that stage. That's sort of been my sentiment on the front of the card. So you see some of these bugs kind of in the sort of shaker window. And I'm doing that out of juniper cardstock, so a slightly lighter shade, hopefully to make it stand out a little bit against that really dark background. And because it's so dainty, I'm actually going to cut out a few layers. And it was at this point that I realized I didn't have liquid adhesive or any left. So I'm trying to be crafty, and I'm using some double-sided adhesive. Of course, I die cut one of my layers out first before I realized I didn't have the liquid adhesive, and so I had to pivot. So I'm adding it to the back of this cardstock because it's kind of smaller than the cardstock I had set aside to cut out each of these dies. I'm trying to make sure I use up, my stash of things. And so I'm going to line it up very carefully on the edge here to make sure that I get as much of the die covered by that double-sided adhesive as possible. So it's really just like kind of a dainty placement of this die here, but it ended up working out, and it was actually the perfect size for that die cut. So I'm going to die cut out in total 3 layers that I will then stack together to form my sentiment. And when I have all of these layers cut out, I am going to remove the back of the double-sided adhesive and adhere them together best I can. And it takes a little bit of maneuverability, but it eventually sort of kind of gets into place. And I'll repeat that process for the final layer to form the sentiment on my card. It was at this point that I stopped what I was doing and went to the store to get some liquid adhesive, because I will need that for the rest of my card, like gluing my little bugs together and my jar and all of that. So I went to Michael's really quickly to grab this Tombow adhesive that I have never used before, so it was an interesting experience. But I think it was fine. This glue takes a little bit longer to dry than some of the other glues that I'm used to, which is great for repositioning, not great if you're trying to keep moving along with your card. I decided I wanted to add a stamped sentiment on the inside of the card. So to fit with the summer vibes of this card, I decided to stamp this little sentiment that says "Enjoy the quiet life" on the inside of the card with rainforest ink. And after that, I decided to do some ink blending on the card base itself, just on that top part of the card, because I learned that I'm kind of a terrible gluer. And so I was worried that the white of the card base would actually show up and be very obvious behind the really dark rainforest cardstock shaker window. And so I'm just ink blending on the edges here, just on that top panel, some rainforest ink, so that on the off chance that I don't do a very good job of lining it up, it won't be immediately obvious that the card base itself is white without, turning it or opening the card itself and realizing that it's white on the inside. I now have a piece of masking paper that I am going to cut these little circles out of. These little circles are going to form the little glow, and I could cut this out of cardstock or vellum or something like that, but I decided to cut them out of masking paper, and I will show you why in just a minute. But first, I'm going to lay out the little bugs that I have. I have 6 of them, and I decided to use all of them on my card panel first. So I'm going to get the layout that I kind of want, spacing them out in a way so you can kind of see them in the jar, even with that top of the jar on, and that they're kind of arranged, spread out. I'm then going to take that masking paper. So I'm actually not going to use the circles themselves. I'm going to use the blank space that is left by the die-cutted circles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the little circle with the little butt. So it's as if the circle is kind of coming out from the butt. And then I'm going to be lifting up, removing the bug itself, and then securing my masking paper with a magnet. And then I'm going to be using this mustard seed distress oxide, which again has pigment properties, so it's going to sit on top of that ink, to pounce in that little masking paper to create sort of that glow on the rainforest cardstock. And I'm going to do this a lot because I really want it to look like it's glowing, and it did require quite a bit of ink. And so when I'm done sort of looking at the bug behind it, that's kind of what it's going to look like. And so I'm going to repeat that with each of the remaining bugs. Again, I have 2 sizes of sort of glowiness, so I'm going to alternate the different sizes. That's why I cut out both, to have some variety. And I'm just going to pounce a lot, a very high amount of ink in these little spaces to really get that glow to kind of pop. And I end up going back over after I've done all of the little circles with another layer, lining them up again and adding more and more ink, just to really get that glowiness to appear behind each of these little bugs. And you can see that it's actually very strong and vibrant here. This was after I was just done with all of the ink first, and I decided, because it's oxiding, to just let it dry overnight. I could have heat set it, but I don't really like heat setting things, so I just decided to let it dry overnight, and you'll see when we get back to it that it's actually dried back a lot. So this is the next morning, and you can see how much it's dried back, but that's okay. It's still really vibrant. It still really pops on that rainforest cardstock background. And so now I'm just going to glue down my little bugs. The next thing I'm gonna do is assemble my shaker card. So I'm getting out this little pretty green, like really bright green mix that I'm gonna use as my shaker bits. And I'm gonna glue some down on the back of the card just so that you can kind of see some sequins even when all of the sequins sort of collect at the bottom. I've seen this technique used by a few different card makers, and I think it's really cool. It makes a lot of sense, so I decided to do it here as well. I'm then going to add foam tape to the back of my shaker window. I did cut out this acetate piece out of the full jar shape, which I don't think I mentioned before. And because of all of these slight curve, it did take a little bit of finagling to get all of this foam tape clear around the edges to make sure it was secure, nothing would fall through any cracks or anything like that. So it was a lot of little tiny pieces, placement, cutting, little pieces, placement, cutting. But all in all, I think it worked out really well. And I'm using 1/8 inch strips of foam adhesive here. And once I have all of that placed, I'm going to remove the backing of it and add some liquid adhesive to give myself some room. I'm then using my Score Buddy to sort of help me line it up and adding my little shaker bits into the window. And then once I'm happy with the amount of shaker bits, I'm going to place the back of my shaker, which is this rainforest, onto the foam adhesive and secure that. And if I've done everything correctly, when I flip this over, it will be a fun little shaker card. It is a little bit busy for my taste. I probably didn't need all 6 bugs or that much shaker bits, but it's fine. It's very bright and I feel like very vibrant for summer. So I think it's all right and it works well. I'm next going to add my hello sentiment right on that front of the window. And I am using foam adhesive here liquid adhesive here because I did not put double-sided adhesive on the back of this. And this will also give me a little bit of room to sort of push it into place. But I am going to dab some of this glue off so that it doesn't squirt out when I place it on the acetate window, which is usually what happens to me. So I'm trying to be very delicate here and not move it around too much. And then the last step is to add adhesive to the the front of the card base and then add the shaker right on top there. And I really wanted to have a matching envelope. So this is actually Rainforest cardstock envelope. And I'm taking that same little dot stamp and just stamping some on the front of the envelope here to sort of match that background. And then I'm also going to do it on the envelope flap as well. Again, just to sort of bring it all together and make it one kind of cohesive card and envelope. And now to show you the finished card, we have sort of that nice detail on the front of the envelope and as well on the back flap of the envelope. And we have our tiny little shaker card, which is smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but still super cute. It's got that nice shake. It's got a lot going on, but you know, we've got a fun little jar. Enjoy the quiet life. I really think it fits with sort of summer vibes and summer themes. I hope you enjoyed this video and I appreciate you watching.